You are listening to Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast.
Welcome to Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast, episode number 10. Today, we have the distinct pleasure of interviewing and talking with and having a conversation with Dr. Keith Smith, who has been in the independent practice space for probably one of the longest in the entire United States. Welcome, Keith, to our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us today with Dr. Keith Smith. You've probably heard of his story and maybe maybe have heard his story, but today we'd like to go through that. I think it's a powerful one. It's a real one, and as I always say, we're not here to impress anyone, but these are real doctors and real stories. And I think what we're going through in America today is real to a lot of Americans. And the really good news about this whole discussion is that through much pioneering, including Dr. Keith Smith is a co-founder of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma and a co-founder of the Free Market Medical Association, the FMMA. There's been a lot of positive action and really the start of a movement, to find real solutions and sustainable solutions for hardworking Americans. And so today we get to hear Dr. Keith Smith's story and how a lot of this started. And this, we're talking going back maybe as much as 20 years or more. I first met Keith in something like 2017 or 18. I can't remember, but it was back when I was in the employer shoes. And I'm one of the maybe the few across the nation that have kind of taken that step or that risk, if you will, and helped pioneer this direct care model to break the monopoly and open a free market. And I have jumped into market. Many of my friends and colleagues who have done this within employers are still with their employers, and they tend to retire with their employers. So I jumped out there and tried to help. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith here. Keith, if you could just kind of give us the start of your story and why you did it and how you did it and all the good things in between.
Sure, you bet, Matt. So I'm an anesthesiologist in private practice. Been in private practice since 1990. I was recruited to Oklahoma City to basically do cardiac anesthesia. I'm cardiac and pediatric fellowship trained. So I was just basically recruited, back to Oklahoma where I was from, primarily to do hearts. And so I worked in several different hospitals. At the time, anesthesiologists on the cardiac anesthesia rotation followed surgeons and did cases all over town. And it didn't take me long to realize that this is not really what I'd signed up for. I was raised in a Christian home to think the golden rule meant something, and it wasn't very long before it was apparent that patients were being just financially assassinated by the hospitals where I worked, and that by providing the anesthetics, I was essentially an accessory to these crimes. This became really clear in the early 1990s, about 92, 93, when the resource-based relative value scale was inflicted on the medical profession, and physician fees from Medicare were brutally slashed. At the same time, hospital payments went up. The hospitals at the time were, I think, afraid that they would be outed, and so they began this very well-orchestrated poor-mouthing campaign. So, the not-for-profit hospitals have all been going broke since 1992, and it's a very well-orchestrated PR campaign. In spite of that message, we all noticed there was a crane building on to the emergency room, their supposed loss leader, everywhere you looked. Any city you go to, the biggest buildings, the biggest cranes, they're always in front of these so-called not-for-profit hospitals going broke. So as an anesthesiologist, I knew there was no way that I was going to be able to escape this meat grinder and participate in the financial destruction of patients unless I got out somehow. The really cynical part of what was going on in the hospitals is, in order to maintain the credibility of this going broke, not-for-profit fiction, they began denying to the physicians I worked with what they needed to complete surgeries in an appropriate manner. They even slashed a clinical staff in order to maintain this fiction, all the while the number of suits and administrative personnel in the hospital exploded. So in 1997, a like-minded anesthesiologist, good buddy, Steve Lantier, and I had enough, and we walked out. And to describe our anesthesia practices at the time as very successful would be an understatement. But we walked away. We saw an opportunity to take over a failing outpatient surgery center, and we bought the operations of this facility on a hunting trip, just Steve and I. And we thought, if we are in control, then we can be both the medical and the financial advocate for patients that come to our facility. That means charging them a fair price. That means charging them nothing at all, if that's what we chose to do. And that's exactly what we did. We opened in May of 1997, so we're coming up on 30 years. And from the very first day, we were quoting prices over the phone. We had no idea how radical that was, but patients would call and ask how much, and we would answer their question with some difficulty at first. I wasn't very good at it in the beginning, but that is exactly what we wanted to do. We swore that patients would never arrive not knowing what they owed us. They would always know. There would never be a fight or conversation about money after a patient arrived. The other mission statement we had basically is we would never accept a dime of money from the government, and we never have. We found Uncle Sam to be an unreliable, abusive partner, and I walked away from Medicare in 1992 and just treated Medicare patients free of charge after that, but never filed another claim. The Surgery Center of Oklahoma has never taken a dime of Medicare money. And if you don't accept federal money, you can actually operate a business in a free market style. And then you can embrace the discipline all the other industries in the United States must endure. So we opened up in 97, quoted prices over the phone. It wasn't long. Every time a patient would come in, I would say, "Did you shop around? Did you get another price?" And they'd say, "No, no one would tell me how much." And then they began to tell us, "Yeah, they actually, I had my other knee operated on 2 years ago at this hospital, and the bill was X, whatever it was." And it became clear that our prices were 1/10, as a rule, 1/10 of what the so-called not-for-profit hospitals were being paid, not charging, being paid for the very same procedure. The other thing about our prices is, when I quoted a price, it was all in. It included the surgeon, anesthesia, and facility, pathology, if that was needed. And so it was cash out the door, bundled pricing. And this went on for a while. Our reputation as a quality facility grew. It grew very quickly because of my pediatric background and that of Dr. Lantier's as well. We anesthetized the children of CEOs who had self-funded companies, and they talked. And the patient experience, particularly for a pediatric patient, was unmatched. We also we operated on all the Division I athletes in the state of Oklahoma, with the exception of University of Tulsa. The Thunder players, when Oklahoma City Thunder first started, they were here. So our reputation for quality really was unmatched. we were subject to countless attacks. As you can imagine, hospitals were exposed when we would quote a price 1/10 of what they were quoting. The insurance companies hated us. We didn't understand that at the time, but no insurance companies would work with us. You would think cheaper, better, what part of that does Blue, United, Cigna, Aetna not love? Turned out they hated it. And it was a while before we began to understand that. So anyhow, we filed out of network claims, treated patients with kid gloves, had cash pay patients. They treat these people, fairly, reasonable price, great care. And we got so busy, we outgrew our facility and built the one we now occupy. It's about 35,000 square foot, very large facility. We have 145 surgeons on staff. We started with 12. So it's been a growing, very successful enterprise. In 2006, 2005, 2006, the insurance commissioner in the state of Oklahoma allowed insurance carriers to stack deductibles. That meant that a patient coming to Surgery Center of Oklahoma out of network received no insurance benefit unless they'd first met their in-network deductible. So they had to meet their in and out-of-network deductibles before they had any kind of insurance benefit. And that shut down really all of the patient flow to us where people had insurance benefit out of network. It almost closed us. So I just shook my head and I thought, I'm a free market guy. We're cheaper, better. There ought to be a line around the damn block. What is going on? And so I just posted a website and I put all of the prices we'd cobbled together that we'd quoted over the phone and a whole bunch more on a website and posted it, really with three goals in mind. One was so that patients who had sticker shock, whether they're uninsured, high deductible, member of a self-funded plan, member of a cost-sharing ministry, you name it, I wanted them to better be able to find us. The other thing I wanted to do was start a price war. I wanted a patient in Minnesota or Alaska to use our price to bludgeon a better price out of whoever, whatever not-for-profit hospital that was otherwise going to bankrupt them. If they wanted to travel to Oklahoma, that was great. But I wanted them to be able to use our pricing as leverage. The third goal of posting the prices was to somehow begin to understand what in the world is going on. Why is the same market discipline that rules every industry in this country except education and healthcare, why is it not operational? Why is cheaper and better not rewarded in this country? And I would argue all three goals have been achieved. There were many self-funded employers that came on board. The biggest of the bunch was really the first. It's my friend Jay Kempton. He had a bunch of clients, and he asked me, will you sell your services for the prices you have listed online to my self-funded clients? And I said, yes. So that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship and friendship. And Jay operates and owns a third-party administrator. So for the physicians listening to this, self-funding probably needs to be explained a little bit. So if you're self-funded as a company, let's say you have 50 or more employees, you decide to write a check every month into an account you control rather than sending it off to Blue Cross for them to buy $5,000 suits and jets. So you hold this money and you use that money to pay for your employees' expenses out of operational revenue. You have an insurance policy, a big safety net that sits underneath that in case something goes terribly, terribly wrong with one of your employees. But essentially, the company is assuming a giant deductible risk. That's how self-funding works, and that's the simplest way I can explain it. I was self-funded at Surgery Center of Oklahoma with 31 employees, and we still are, and it's worked beautifully. So we are in complete control. There's nobody that's saying, oh, well, hip arthroscopy and labral repair is experimental. We're not going to pay for that. We do whatever we want. I mean, our health plan says whatever it is, we take care of our employees, and they have no out of pocket, zero. My employees have zero out of pocket, and so they don't have this deductible barrier to their care. So if you think through what I just explained, self-funded buyers, employers that are self-funded have the same sticker shock that an individual does who's having to write a check. So they are essentially writing a check for their employees' care, but they usually hire someone to hold that checkbook for them. And that's what a third-party administrator is. Some employers make a huge mistake and throw the checkbook, even though they're self-funded, to Blue, United, Cigna, Aetna. And so Blue, United, Cigna, Aetna, they provide fully insured policies, but they also serve as third-party administrators. That's a big mistake because they are skimming every transaction. There are independent third-party administrators like Jay Kempton, and those are the ones that really have sticker shock and really are seeking value. So I was very popular with them. I have contracts with self-funded employers in 49 states. They send their employees here, pay their travel, waive all their out-of-pocket to get to Oklahoma City. And what happened was there were facilities that realized patients were walking away from them to come see me, and they wanted to get on board. And I received all manner of phone calls. Some of them were angry. Some of them were curious. We just lost a cruciate ligament reconstruction to you. What is wrong with you? And why are you so greedy? I've heard, the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross range of grief, where that's disbelief and then anger and eventually they get to acceptance. But what astonished my physician colleagues was I was happy to teach them exactly how I was doing this.
You are listening to Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast.
And so this kind of brotherhood emerged. Jay Kempton was the same way. He was teaching his competitors, his independent third-party administrator competitors, how to deal with a maverick seller of services like me. And one day Jay said, I think we're on to something. He said, you and I, neither one are trying to get rich. We are really missional, trying to change things. And I think there's something out there we can tap into and really have kind of a free market movement. So Jay suggested that we start an association. The association is called the Free Market Medical Association. It is now gigantic in 37 states. We've had Ron Paul, Steve Forbes be keynote speakers, Lisa Kennedy from Fox. They've been keynote speakers at our annual events. And it really has become a movement in the country. The idea that you can provide value, you can say, here is what I do, here's how much it is, and let the market judge me, just like every other industry. Put buyers and sellers in the same room together and let them work out an exchange that's mutually beneficial, not some network executive where they're saying, this is what we pay you. No. Physicians decide what they're going to be paid. So to give the docs listening to this an idea, one of the most frequent questions I'm asked is, how do you come up with your pricing? The first, a new procedure comes up. Let's say it's a hysterectomy, a laparoscopic assisted vaginal hysterectomy. The first thing I do is pick up the phone and call the surgeon. And I ask them, how much do you want? And that is an astonishing moment for that surgeon, for that physician. They are used to being told, this is what you're going to receive. and it rarely is an amount that is fair. The institutions and the facilities typically are better at negotiating, and they wind up doing very, very well, but the physicians get clobbered. So when I ask a doctor how much do they want, I am always just shaking my head at the very small amount that a physician or surgeon tells me they find satisfactory for payment for their case. If it's too low, I don't accept it. So I just tell them, if you're happy with that, you'll be really happy with what I have in mind for you. As an anesthesiologist, I put my pricing together, and we basically bill for our time. That's not entirely true, but it's mostly true. And Surgery Center of Oklahoma, which I control, basically works as a general contractor, time and materials. I know how long every one of these cases will require in the operating room with a little bit of margin, and I know what the supply cost is. I can look back, I can forecast, and if I'm wrong, I sharpen my pencil and I make changes. But that's not calculus. That's arithmetic. You add those things up and you end up with a price. And then you show that to the world and let the market judge you. And, when you look at, I think our price for a knee arthroscopy is $4,110, and that's all in. The amount that the surgeon receives is more than any carrier pays them. And that's intentional. I try to operate the facility at a razor thin margin and instead pay the people doing the work handsomely. And we do. So we have a clearinghouse called Atlas Billing Company that has its own website and pricing. That company receives all the payments that come to Surgery Center of Oklahoma. And then my crew pays surgeon anesthesia facility separately. And it's been a real eye-opening experience. Everybody in my facility has smiles on their face. We don't have any carrier contracts. We don't deal with Blue United, Cigna, Aetna. They don't tell us how much we're going to be paid. They don't tell us we're going to pay you, and then, oh, psych, we've decided that's pre-existing. We're not going to pay you. We don't do that. We don't accept money from Medicare, so we don't have the government, Uncle Sam, looking over our shoulder and thumping us on the head when they think we've made some mistake. It's and it's not new. That's what I think a lot of physicians don't understand. This is a throwback. This is the way it used to be everywhere until the government got involved and screwed it all up. We've decided that we are confident enough in our abilities, in the value that we render, that we will put it out there, stick a price on it, let the market judge us. And I would encourage any physicians listening to this to summon the courage to even take a baby step toward this model, because it will put smiles on your face, really, and everyone you work with.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure that synopsis of your last 20 years is amazing. Now, you said something early on. You said that I believe you said your partner's name is Steve.
Steve
Yes.
Longier, yes.
Yes, Steve Longier. When you both decided to leave the system, this is one of the hangups that we have seen from potential doctors wanting to leave the system is, were you in a contract? How did you leave the system? Was it at the end of your contract? Like, what was that? No. Okay.
No, I didn't have a contract. So I've never been an employed physician and never will be. So as an anesthesiologist, I was part of an anesthesia group, but I was an independent practitioner. I worked at 7 hospitals, probably 10 facilities total. So I was an independent practitioner, and all of the surgeons who initially joined us were independent. We actually have some employed physicians that work at our facility now, but they're the exception to the rule. But I didn't have a contract. And the best way to get out of a contract is to make sure you know what you're signing when you go in. So my lawyer and friend has told me to always pay attention in a contract to what he calls the punch out clause. I jump out and I pull the ripcord. What does that look like? And he said, if that gives you real flexibility, you don't have to worry too much about the details in the contract, because if it turns out after you've signed it, it's unacceptable, and the punch out clause is really pretty easy without too much friction, you can just get out of it. So I encourage, anything that has got a long time for notification, or, you ought to have 30 days cancelable by either party without notice. You just have to insist on things like that. And then you can get out of some situation that either becomes or was concealed from you to be not mutually beneficial. The exchanges that are not mutually beneficial at the end of a bayonet, whether it's government or a contract, are the stuff that burnout is made of. And physicians, I think physician employment is a disaster. And I don't think most people know why hospitals are able to employ physicians, but it's a concerted effort by the government, because Medicare overpays these hospitals and provides them the funding, really, to just snatch physicians out of the marketplace who don't know any better, have some debt, and I'm going to get a job. And the next thing, they want to hang themselves because they know the best gallbladder surgeon in town is not part of their hospital, but they can't refer to them. They have to refer to the butcher down the hall, who they know has all kinds of problems. And that is terrible. That is not a position any physician should ever be in, but it's inevitable if you're an employee.
Keith, you and I know each other fairly well, as I'd mentioned, and I, as the chapter leader for FMMA for Wisconsin, I've had a chance to see behind the scenes, if you will, of FMMA a little bit and the workings. And I can attest that one of the things that I value the most, and in my life, but is to hold on to your values. And they say a value is something you're willing to suffer for, right? It's not negotiable, if you will. And that's why I like the FMMA and Keith's leadership so much, and Jay's leadership. What's interesting to me is that the splash that you've made in America, and we might humorously say in Canada as well, and some of this, right, wasn't foreseen and wasn't intentional, but you've been an inspiration to so many, including me. I'm on the board for Veritas Surgery. You were an inspiration to them, and a mentor in Wellbridge in Indiana. And Tim Murray, we've talked with on this podcast, Solstice Health in Milwaukee, and several others, I'm sure, and many others. And if I could just share my story, and it's not about me, this is about the doctor's story, but I want you to know who Keith is. And this was 10 years ago, so we're both a little bit older today. My beard's a little bit more gray than it was back then. But I had met, and I'll make this quick, but I met Keith. I was on my journey as an employer. And I met Keith through a reference from my DPC doctor, we had on-site clinics. And he said, "Hey, have you heard of this Surgery Center of Oklahoma?" And I hadn't. And we were a couple of years in, and we had a location in Springfield, Missouri. And so we weren't all too far, but I was driving back one day and I called the Surgery Center of Oklahoma and I said, "I think we're at this stage. We've done on-site clinic, we've done on-site MRI, we've done on-site physical therapy. We're moving on this. I need specialty care, I need surgery, and I can't find it anywhere that's, transparent and affordable." And they said, "Oh, just send Keith an email Monday." And I was that was the receptionist, I think. And I was a little surprised by that, because I had been watching Keith Smith's tutorial videos and so forth. And I thought, man, I'm just a younger, well, I don't know about that, but a less experienced HR leader. And I thought, okay, fine. And so I got in early Monday morning and I'm typing this email to Keith Smith, and I'm thinking, what a waste of my time, but he's not going to respond to me. And but I did it because that's what she told me to do. And it wasn't but 30 minutes later. And this is before, right? I had really taken my journey. I was, right. I wasn't known as any kind of leader in this space. And, but my phone rings and this is even the old style phones, the desk phone, and it says Keith Smith. And I thought, well, that's kind of humorous. I'm really sure it's Keith Smith. Right. And, but I picked up the phone and then I hear Keith's distinct voice. And I'm like, wow, he actually called me, and and uh, and and he's like, you are ahead of the curve. You are doing so, because I had sent him a bullet point of things I had done. You are doing so awesome. We'd love to work with you. We'd love to help you. And we started sending hip replacements to Oklahoma. And guess what? And think of that, right? And we put them in first class, but that's a long ways. And the discomfort of going through a commercial airport after having a hip replacement and so forth. But they did it because we actually paid them $2,500 to do it. And that's how much, because we could save. The plan would win. They would win. They've been waiting for many years. You got people limping around the business in pain. And so I'll stop there. But I just want you to know that's the kind of person Keith is. And if you haven't heard about the FMMA, you should think about it, because that would give you access to Keith and others, and just many physicians across the country who are doing this. And this is the kind of group to be in, because I know the whole reason we're doing this podcast is because many physicians are frustrated, and we're trying to support this effort. So just Keith, I know I said this before, but thank you for that. And you're an inspiration to me, and part of the reason I'm sitting here today trying to fight the good fight here. So.
You are listening to Lifeboat for the Whitecoat podcast.
Thank you. And Matt, you're an inspiration to everybody who's around you. It's, the Free Market Medical Association is buyers and sellers. And the intermediaries, the middlemen, are not allowed unless they facilitate the exchange between the buyers and the sellers. And the buyers and the sellers are the sellers are me. I mean, I'm a physician. I'm an anesthesiologist. I also, as a seller, represent an institution, the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. But there are all kinds of sellers that are part of the organization. The buyers are the people that have sticker shock. And then the intermediaries are the ones who make sure that communication, that exchange between the buyer and the seller has as little friction as possible. Jay Kempton is famous for saying, that those that create friction and make money off it are not allowed in this association. And they're really the problem. And a lot of the people that just step in, create friction, and skim off of that crisis make a whole lot more money than the people actually providing the care. And that's sick. And I know physicians, they hate that. And there's another way. I'm a short-term pessimist, but I'm a long-term optimist. I think things are going to get a little worse before they get better. But there is an alternative, and physicians need to know this. The people who run surgery centers need to know there is an alternative way to do business where you're not being jackbooted by the carriers and the government. Our mission is not to fix the system. The system is a cesspool that I believe is unfixable. The only way to fix a bad restaurant that's serving poisonous food is to build a good one across the street and hope that people will buy from that. And then the other one just dies on the vine. It just withers. So we are all about creating an alternative, an honest way to provide care, put a price on it, stand behind it, all the above. And I encourage physicians that are hearing this to really give some thought to summoning the courage to walk away from whatever it is you're doing, even if it's baby steps, even if it's a tiny way. Try putting prices together if you run a surgery center. If you're an orthopedist, reach out to somebody you play golf with who runs a self-funded company, and hand them, send them links to videos from the Free Market Medical Association, and begin your own education about how does self-funding work. How can I get in on this? If you're an orthopedist and you do a lot of knee replacements and you're really good at it, there is no reason in the world you should be satisfied with Medicare paying you $900 or $1,000 for that. That's insane. It's time for physicians to step up now, but you have to be willing to say, here is what I do, here is how much I want for it, and I think I'm good enough that I'm not that I deserve, but that I'm worth that. And if I'm wrong, then the market judges me. So, physicians many times want to hide behind their license. They want to be victimized by all of these contracts, and you don't have to. If you don't feel bold enough to just completely secede like I did, then I would encourage you to do it in little steps.
I was just thinking to myself many things as you were speaking, and I really appreciate you sharing all of your wisdom and experience. The system kind of reminds me of the mob a little bit, how they just bully people, patients like me who are non-physicians, into receiving care without, I don't really feel empowered to make a choice. And I know that this podcast really is driven to talk to doctors, but I think that we're going to get patients like myself without a medical background. How would you recommend even just the general population to learn about how to advocate for their own health in making choices, even if they have the big insurance policies? What would you recommend the general population do to get educated to support physicians like yourself?
Well, the Free Market Medical Association is a great resource and a place to start. In terms of our own medical issues, the answer is to go back in time, a time machine, because before the government screwed it all up, there was an advocate. It was a primary care doctor, and they were not employed by a hospital system that was flogging them to burp out RVUs. So I would encourage patients to find an independent, non-employed primary care doctor who actually knows who the best gallbladder surgeon is in town. They know who the surgeon is that ought to be doing cruciate ligament reconstructions. They know that this cardiac surgeon kills most of the patients that he operates on, and you should avoid them. So the ombudsman, the advocate, traditionally the person that has helped patients navigate as an industry that is complicated, that was the independent primary care doctor. And the direct primary care movement is another place for patients to look. Two people almost simultaneously came to the same conclusion. A guy named Josh Umber in Wichita, Kansas, and my friend Lee Gross. They're both friends, but Lee Gross is in Sarasota, Florida. And they said, why can't the average American have concierge care? There are people that are paying, $10,000, $20,000 a year just so a physician will answer their phone call or a text. And, that's the concierge model because they don't want to wait. They don't want to wait in line. Well, Lee and Josh said, well, why can't the average American do this? Well, they figured out that for about $80 a month, if you just pay $80 a month and for a subscription, of course, their goal was to keep it less than a cell phone bill. So $80 a month, you have unlimited access to a primary care doc, and they limit their panel of patients to about 600, if I remember right. Most primary care docs and in hospital systems, they have 2,000 or 3,000 patients, so they can only spend about 30 seconds with you when you go in. This is different. You make an appointment and you're sitting across from the doc for 30, 45 minutes, and they limit it 600 patients. $80 a month. They're making a great living. Their patients love them. It's a mutually beneficial exchange. And if they need something diagnostic or procedurally, they know who to call. And if they don't know, they know who to call, who does know who to call. And it's not because I'm obligated to refer you to the butcher up the hallway who also works for the same hospital system that I do. I would encourage all the patients listening to this to seek out a direct primary care doctor. And if they're not part of the direct primary care movement, just an independent doc that's not working for a hospital system. And then they will be your navigator. They'll be your ombudsman. They'll be your advocate, because there's no way. I have patients call me all the time and they say, I want Dr. X at your facility to do my procedure. I said, they don't even do that procedure. I mean, patients don't know, and they're not supposed to know. So that's what I would recommend.
I think as America starts to learn about direct care, and that's one of my goals, and even have a neat little colorful book coming out hopefully in the next few months, just to describe what DPC is, which I describe as the heartbeat and the hub of this all, because then they enable direct specialty care as well, surgery centers, and that smooth referral. Because once you're in the swamp, they don't let you out. But I think the power of the movement seems to be maybe more, but seems to stand out to me as two things. One is numbers. There's power in numbers and people, but then also a strict adherence to those original values, and to never sacrifice and never lose those. Maybe there's more, but I think that's what's happening in the FMMA, is that we're seeing more join, but then there also then has to be a strict review of how everyone's doing things. There's lots of bad actors out there, but I'll tell you, if you're a physician who's listening to this, and you're interested in joining this movement, and you've heard me say before, as a former HR leader, how long can you kind of tolerate these problems and tread water in the swamp? It's not a fun experience. It's probably not what you dreamed of when you started medical school. How many years of career do you have left? 10, 20, 30? It's a long time to tread water in that swamp. So hopefully Keith can be an inspiration, and we're kind of hitting time here, so we'll wrap this up. But hopefully Keith can be an inspiration to you and all the doctors he's inspired across the nation. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm glad to help. I know Keith is as well, and learning about the FMMA and just in networking and meeting other doctors who have done it. Doctors who have done it often serve as mentors to others and helping them be successful as well. I've had surgery myself at the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. My shoulder is now better. And I might even be taking a road trip, Keith, because unfortunately I can't seem to find oral surgery. Maybe it's out there, but I've got a 19-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter who need their wisdom teeth removed. So we might be taking a road trip. And I had even testified in front of a Senate committee once in Wisconsin, where the senator had stood up at the end and said I had to go to Oklahoma to get fair price surgery. So I think much of that is changing. But as the physicians out there, this has started, and we've gained a lot of momentum, but there's a lot of work to do here. We're not over that hump yet. We're certainly not the new norm, which is the reflection of a true cultural change. The new norm of juxtaposing a new health system made of direct care next to the very broken and corrupt one. So, Keith, I just want to thank you again for your time today. And I do have one home run question. I'd like to throw you a softball. Well, I'm not sure it's a softball, but it's a good question. But I always like to ask the doctors, so in your shoes, right, and you've shared a lot of it in your story, hopefully there's lots of physicians out there saying, I'm frustrated, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to do it. What would your advice be to them, just person to person, kind of on a personal level, if you will?
I think person to person, I would want to convey a message of optimism and hope, which is not false, it's real. And I might inform a physician I was talking to who felt trapped with a carrier contract. I would tell them our most rapidly growing demographic at Surgery Center of Oklahoma are patients who have insurance. Patients that have Blue, United, Cigna, Aetna, who are being denied or delayed. and they are ready to pay cash. And you have got to wrap your mind around accommodating that. That is a demand for what I offer that is now nationwide. It is a demand that is an insane opportunity for someone that is flirting with these ideas and concepts, that where is all my business going to come from? Oh my, there is a whole new demographic out there of demand. And so for the physicians that are listening to this, that are just thinking, I'm not going to have any patients if I do this, they need to understand this movement is not going anywhere. This horse is out of the barn, and it's time to get on board even a little bit. We had a very well-to-do land developer in Edmond who had one of these blue United Cigna Aetna plans. He had a bucket handle tear of his meniscus, and he was told that it would take 2 weeks to authorize his 25-minute knee arthroscopy. And he came and paid us, I think our price is $4,110 all in, because he didn't have 2 weeks to wait on them. We are seeing that all the time. And so that demand is out there. And I would think that would create some hope and would dash the fear and concerns that a doc would have about, where my patient's going to come from, how am I going to do this? So anything I would say at this point would just be very, very encouraging. The water is warm. It was cold when I jumped in, but the water's getting warmer all the time. It's it's not as tinfoil hat a concept as it used to be.
Terrific. Yeah, so we can wrap this up. Last thing, Steve, if someone wants to reach out to you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, they can feel free to just email me directly like you did. It's ksmith@surgerycenterok.com. We're all over LinkedIn and Twitter, Instagram. But if somebody wants to get a hold of me directly, just email me. That's the best thing to do. And I'll help you as best I can.
Did I just say Steve there?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, that was weird. I was looking up at a message. Do you want me to redo that?
I'll just remove that. It's okay.
Yeah, sorry. So I can re-record it if you like. So let me just do that. So it's just kind of a wrap up. Keith, can you tell us if someone wants to reach out to you, how they would do that? And so
the best way to reach me is to email me directly. My email is ksmith@our website, surgerycenterok.com. We're all over social media. I'm not as good with social media messaging, so just email me. I'd look at it, but not very often. Just email me directly, and I'll help you as best I can.
Sounds great. Thank you again for your very valuable time and for all you're doing. And if there's any way I can help you and encourage you, certainly I'm glad to do that. You've certainly been a great encouragement to me and many others. So thank you again.
I appreciate all that you're doing, Matt. Thank you, guys. Good to meet you.
This concludes this episode of Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast. Please make sure you visit whitecoatlifeboat.com.